Okay, Boker Tov. Boker Tov, and we'll talk today. We'll schmooze. Class I know is a little early because I'm doing some traveling. And in fact, I just want to inform you that I'm not sure the schedule of classes for the next several weeks. Hopefully we'll be able to do class. We'll see what happens. But let's talk and let's schmooze today. Today is Father's Day. I think today's Father's Day, yeah? Now you might ask, why wouldn't I know for sure if it's Father's Day? Because in Yiddishkeit and Torah, every day is Father's Day. It's just the reality. I remember hearing a very cute statistic, but this also reveals, a historical fact. This is, excuse me, this is before the days of smartphones. And when we all used to get into the car and we used to just listen to the radio. Remember those days? And if I remember correctly, the name of the news station here in South Florida was WINZ. And, you get into the car, you put on the car, and you want to listen to a bit of news. And if I remember, they said the following statistic. They said like this, that the most calls, phone calls, regular calls, again, before smartphones, the most calls that are made in this country is on Mother's Day. And then they added the statistic that the most collect calls, for those of you who remember what collect calls are, the most collect calls in this country happen on Father's Day. So, there you go. You have that. Now, I want to connect this with the Parsha. There's so much we could talk about. And the Parsha that we just read is Vayikach Korach. The famous story of Korach. Korach was the rebel who challenged Moshe and his leadership. And like everything in Torah, there's so many insights and layers into what exactly happened there. But on the simplest level, he challenged Moshe's leadership and Moshe choosing who should be leaders, whether it's himself, whether it's Aaron, and so on. And he was Moshe's first cousin, so this was also a family feud. And the Torah tells us Vayikach Korach, and Korach took Ben Yitzhar. He took Korach. He took who? He took several other people and convinced them to join Moshe. In joining him in rebelling against Moshe. It doesn't say in the Torah so clearly what he took. Vayikach Korach, it says Korach took the son of Kahas and Levi and Dasan and Aviram, but it doesn't say what they took or what he took. And therefore commentaries tell us, amongst many other explanations, including there's also a Zohar over here from the Jewish, let me just shut off the ringer over here so it doesn't disrupt us. So Korach took, says Rashi right away on the spot. What does it mean by Yikach Korach? Korach took. It doesn't say what he took. So the Yikach Korach, says Rashi, that he took himself on the side. He sort of took himself away from being part of the community. Anytime you're involved in discord, in machloket, in strife, in argument, in fighting, in rebellion, you take yourself away, especially when you're fighting against Moshe Rabbeinu. So, but one of the commentaries says, what's the Vayikach Korach? Why does the Parsha open up with that statement? Because in these words, and Korach took, the Torah is telling us what's the core issue over here. The core issue is that Korach was a taker rather than a giver. I have people that move over here to the community all the time, and that people who come in and one of their primary concerns is, okay, what can they get? What can they take from the community? And sometimes it's all innocent and fine and good. What could you offer here? What could you offer for my kids? What could you offer? What does the community have to offer to me? Fine. It's legitimate within reason. But then you have people who come in and they say to me, Rabbi, what can I give to the community? How can you utilize me and my family to enhance the community, to make the community a better community? Please, put me to use. So here the Torah right away describes Vayikach Korach. Korach was a taker. We all know the people like that. And we're all that way to some extent. Some are more selfless, more self-absorbed, and so on. So the Torah is telling us the core over here of the problem is Vayikach Korach. Korach took. I say this in connection with Father's Day. Father's Day. or parents. Statistically, I'm sure you've heard this, in the last 40, 50 years, those who have the incredible merit of being a father, being a dad, being a mother, being a parent, being grandparents, that number has declined dramatically. I just looked it up, on Google, Gemini. You look it up yourself, you'll see the numbers have declined. And, there's all this discussion, why those numbers have declined. And I would say that part of the reason, amongst others, is in this as well, that even how we look at the greatest blessing that we could have, which is raising children, we have also started to look at it, okay, how does it impact me? What do I have? What do I get for it? And what burden is it on me? In other words, one of the core requirements of being a parent is to be selfless, is to understand that the child is not here for you, but you're there to raise a beautiful soul. And that's the greatest blessing. And there's no greater feeling, even with, it's difficult to raise kinderlach. It's difficult. Financial difficulties, emotional difficulties, there's pain involved, there's anxiety involved, there's stress involved, but it is the greatest blessing. And I don't think anybody ever says to themselves, I should have left this one out. I mean, maybe there could be extreme examples, but for the most part, no one regrets having another child and another child. And that's why the Rebbe pushed that we should have more children, and it's the greatest blessing. So it's very apropos that Vayikach Korach and Korach took. Our generation, which is not uncommon, that when we have a time of plenty, and we have been blessed with incredible abundance, by and large. Of course, there are people who struggle, and may God bless them that they shouldn't struggle. But by and large, we are blessed with tremendous abundance. And with that, unfortunately, sometimes comes looking sort of inward. Looking inward here, I mean in a bit of a negative sense, meaning you become comfortable and you want to just continue to provide for those comforts. And you say, what do I need the burden? What do I need the headache for? And that is Vayikach Korach. Korach was a taker, not a giver. There's nothing, our purpose in life is to be givers. Not to be shmatas, but to be givers. If you understand that expression for those Yiddish listeners. So Vayikach Korach. Korach was a taker. And because he was a taker, the Zohar says, I don't have the Zohar in front of me. The Zohar says this expression. The Zohar says that there were two of the wealthiest men in history, one a Jew and one a Gentile. One was Korach, where the Medrash tells us that he was exceedingly wealthy, and one was Haman, who was also exceedingly wealthy. And the Zohar continues to tell us, the Talmud elaborates on this as well, but the Zohar continues to tell us that because they were not satisfied with what they had, they wanted more. As Moshe Rabbeinu himself, as Moses in the parsha, in the words of the Torah says, Hama'at mikem, do you not already have enough, whatever God has given you, and you want more? So Korach wanted more. He was a taker. And when you're a taker, you're never satisfied with what you have, and you feel that you deserve more. So Korach was a taker. So the Zohar says, these two incredibly wealthy men wanted more, and what they wanted they couldn't have, and what they had they lost. Korach lost, as the Torah tells us, that he met a unusual end, and with the earth opening up miraculously, as the Torah tells us. And Haman, we know what happened with Haman as well in the Purim story. So, in fact, the Zohar says that because on a deeper level, it came from the fact that Vayikach Korach, Korach took. What does that mean, Korach took? Korach took, on a deeper level, it means that he looked at all the wealth that he had, and he said, I deserve it. I earned it. I worked for it. It's mine. To use the lashon, to use the expression of Torah, that it's kochi v'otzem yod. It's the strength of my hands that has brought me all this wealth. It's my doing. Vayikach Korach. He took credit for himself. When you start taking credit for yourself, then rather than attributing with humility, of course you put in the effort, but with humility you say, okay, this is the blessing that Hashem has given me. Then you're not jealous of others, and you don't want what others have. You are fully content and happy, and utilize and appreciate and cherish that which you have. I saw a story. It's a somewhat of a cute story, but it's a real story where a Machaber Sefer. There was an author of a book. His name was the Moed Einayim is the book he wrote, which literally means the light of the eyes. And he says that he writes like this. He says in his childhood he became what we call in Yiddish akaylach dikayosem. Akaylach dikayosem literally means a full-rounded orphan, meaning sadly he lost both his parents, and he was raised by his uncle. But apparently his uncle wasn't such a kind individual. I guess he did it because he did it out of feeling some sense of responsibility, but he did not treat his nephew like he treated his own children. His own children he treated more favorably, where the Moed Einayim writes, the fresh bread he would give to his children, and to me he would give the leftover bread, which was all dried up. He says his own children he would make sure to give them some butter, which was like sort of a delight and a treat, and I was never given any butter. And being a young child, of course, this pained me. And one day I sort of found myself alone in the, storage, or the underground storage. It's before refrigeration, where they kept the butter, and I took the piece of dry bread that was allotted to me, and I quickly dipped it into the bucket without permission. And as I started to eat the bread, I realized that in my excitement and my haste or whatever it is, I dipped my bread not into the bucket of butter, but into the bucket of kerosene. And not only did I not get butter, I even lost the dry piece of bread of the day. So the Moed Einayim related this story years later, and he said like this. He says, of course, my pain for being treated differently is real. But I then came to realize, and it became a lesson to my entire life, that you could only take that which Hashem decides is yours. For whatever reason, it was not decided. It was decided beyond my understanding that I shouldn't have butter. And there's no way around that. There's no way around that. You could try, but Hashem, if Hashem doesn't decree it, so Vayikach Korach took, on a somewhat lighter note, but a story I heard that describes the way people can justify certain behavior, and you justify it to almost a comical sense, but there's a lesson to that as well. I know this class is a little bit like Farbrengen. We just came from Gimel Tammuz, and it's the day of the Rebbe's passing, and there was a lot of Farbrengens going on and Torah learning. So some of these thoughts I'm sharing with you. So there was a in Lubavitch. Lubavitch is the village where Chabad headquarters was for many, many years. In I think it's White Russia, Lubavitch. If anybody knows, you're welcome to correct me over here. And there was a Ganav. We know what a Ganav is. Everybody knows what a Ganav is. It was a thief, a religious man, but he was a thief. Go explain it. Everybody in town knew he was a Ganav. He was a Ganav. And yet, I heard this story from the famed Mashpia, Reb Melech Tzvibel. I was listening to a Torah class of his. And yet, on Rosh Hashanah, he would sit and daven, and with tears and cry like the most pious fellow in the synagogue. He would sit seriously for hours and daven on Rosh Hashanah. And people were wondering, this is kind of strange. And finally, someone asks him and says, tell me, what are you davening with on Rosh Hashanah? You're Yankel the Ganav, whatever his name was. He says, this is what I daven, this is what I pray. I pray that if anybody, it was decreed from heaven that they have to lose. Vayikach Korach took and wanted to take something that's not his. So if somebody, it was decreed from God that they have to be the victim of theft, I ask that it should come through me. I should be the fellow who gets that account, so to speak. That's what I daven. And apparently he was sincere. The mimer that Rabbi Tzvibel was discussing is that sometimes people have faith, genuine faith, but it's disconnected from having impact on a person, where you could have faith, you could have emunah, you could have faith, but you don't internalize it and understand. To use the language of the Talmud, that ganva, ganav, right before he breaks into the house, he prays to Hashem. He says, "Please help me, protect me, that this theft should be successful." On a deeper level, there's a nuanced attitude in our life in many ways, where we believe in God, we believe in Torah, we believe in Judaism, but when it comes to action and to actualizing that which we believe, there's a disconnect. And on a refined, sort of subtle level, most of us have areas, what we might call blockages or blind spots in our relationship with Hashem, not because we don't believe, not because we know the Torah doesn't say so, but there's that blind spot of disconnecting that from internally or sort of affecting us in our actions. So this is part of the Vayikach Korach. Korach took, and he started taking credit for himself. And there's a story in the Gemara. There's a story with Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Chanina ben Dosa, the Gemara says, was a miracle worker. He was an extremely holy rabbi in the days of the Mishnah. The Torah talks about various, the Talmud, so it talks about miracles that occurred. And one of the stories there, the Talmud says, is that he was very poor. And there's various stories. I'm not going to go into all the stories now. And at one point, his wife said to him, "Why do we have to live in this poverty? And you perform miracles for others and help them. So why do we have to suffer? Why? Favos." So the Talmud says a miracle happened, and all of a sudden there was this golden foot table, totally of gold, that a hand brought forth, and they took it, and this would have been enough for them to live comfortably. And that night, Reb Chanina ben Dosa, or his wife, had a dream that everybody in the Garden of Eden was learning and studying and living on this beautiful gold table that had sturdy legs, and theirs was missing one leg. And when they saw that, when he related the dream to his wife, or perhaps she saw the dream herself, she said, "That I don't want. I don't want it to take off from our merit in the world to come." It's pretty clear that a lot of this is meant on some metaphoric level. There's no physical tables there, and but the message, as many of the Agadaic stories, is there's some spiritual and metaphoric level over here of what this is. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa prayed, he davened, and all of a sudden a hand came out and took the foot back, so that he should have no sort of reduction. Nothing should be reduced from their reward in the world to come after 120. And Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa said to his wife, the second miracle is greater than the first miracle. Why? He says, because Mishamayim, from heaven, it's much easier for heaven to give than to take back. To give blessing is one thing. Once they gave you the blessing, to take it back is more difficult. So one of the commentators gives in line of our discussion over here, gives a little insight of it, and this is the way he explains this Talmudic statement. On the simple, straightforward level, I don't like to use the word simple. On the straightforward level, it means, as I explained, from heaven they give, they don't take back. But this Torah scholar explained on a sort of lesson level. He says like this: from heaven, all our blessings come from our heaven. All our sustenance, all blessings, everything originates from what is allotted to us by the heavenly court, by Hashem, and so on. He says, Mishamayim, this is the language they go, Mishamayim me'ev kayav. From the heavens they give. There's a flow and they give. You know when you stop the flow? You know when you interfere and you start to clog up the flow? Mishkaloi shakla. Now, what does it mean? As I said before, Mishkaloi shakla means, on the straightforward level, they give from heaven, but they don't take back. But here, this commentary says a little insight on the words over here, which is very beautiful. Mishamayim me'ev yav, from heaven they give. They're always going to give. There's a flow. You know what can impede, can stop that flow. Mishkal, when you start to take. What does it mean when you start to take? When you start to give yourself credit and you think it's what you have done that gives you that blessing, Mishkal loy shakla, then you cannot take. When you start thinking it's your doing, it all comes because of your prowess and so on, loy shakla, then it's not going to remain with you. You cannot take it. So, to bring this all together, Father's Day, wonderful. You should honor your father, give him a call, so on, take him out, find out what he needs. There's very clear laws in Shulchan Aruch. The Talmud talks about Kibbud Avim, one of the 10 Commandments, and so on. Unbelievable. But remember this in both directions. If you have the ability to be a father, to become a father of Nocha Yingala, Nocha Meidla, another child and another, remember it's the most selfless act and it's the most rewarding act at the same time. Mishamayim Me'av Yovid, in order to be blessed with children, it's a blessing from Hashem. It's a blessing from Hashem. Me'av Yavid, it's given from Hashem. There's people who pine because they don't have children. On the other hand, remember that it's a blessing and take that blessing. Take that blessing and be part of that blessing. There is nothing more important for children to be born, especially in homes with good values, with Jewish values, with Torah values. It is critical today. It's critical, and while it demands a real element of selflessness, but you're fulfilling the first mitzvah in the Torah is to be fruitful and to multiply. Not to have one child and two children and you're fine and you're done. To be fruitful and to multiply. As the Talmud tells us, Echad Moiled Harba, one gives birth to many. It's the greatest blessing, it's the greatest reward. Yesterday someone was discussing with someone else, I overheard a conversation about long-term long-term care insurance. And someone said, my biggest long-term care is that I have birth, thank God, to a X amount of children. That's my best long-term care policy. So that is just a side reward. The more important reward is that you're doing what Hashem wants. You're bringing forth and you're utilizing whatever has been invested in you for so many years, for so many generations. You're passing on to the next generation. There's nothing more greater than that. And at the same time, recognize that that's what your parents have done for you. They're not perfect. They're human beings. They might have made some mistakes. But raising you, and you are in this world today, is because of the incredible dedication that your parents have had and what they have invested in their life and then passed it on to you. So it's an incredible blessing. Show your parents the same selfless blessing towards them and what they need. And if sometimes they make you uncomfortable, and sometimes I remember someone mentioning that every day, I think, they call their parent, and even though their parent kvetches the entire time, so they put the phone down, and the parent kvetches, and they let their parents kvetch, and then okay, goodbye, mata, whatever it is. But meanwhile, they've done the mitzvah. So hopefully that's not the case in yours. I've also seen children that are best friends with their parents in a respectful way. So that's my thoughts for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. Hopefully you have parents that you could show them your appreciation. If not, they're in heaven and they're looking after us and they're being a Melitz Yosha, they're being good advocates to bring forth blessing for us and our entire family. Sei gesund. Have a wonderful week.